Imagine living in a world where a killer could walk right past you and you'd never know. Imagine bodies being found on a beach, in vacant lots, or along lonely highways, one after another, and no one being brought to justice. Imagine a serial killer so careful, so quiet, that even decades later, they remain a complete mystery. This isn't fiction. This isn't a movie. These are real stories, real crimes, and real killers who are still out there. From the dunes of Long Island, where women were wrapped in burlap and buried by the sea, to the deserts of Albuquerque, where bones were found in the dust, untouched for years. Across quiet Midwest highways, where shopkeepers were gunned down with military precision, and into the heart of Chicago, where over 50 women were murdered. Most of their cases still remain unsolved. This is a journey into 5 of the most chilling serial killer cases in America. Cases that remain open. Cases that reveal not just violence, but a system that failed to see the pattern. In this documentary, we're not chasing theories. We're confronting cold facts. And the disturbing question, how many killers have truly gotten away with murder? Chapter 1, The Long Island Serial Killer, Lisk Gilgo Beach Killer, the South Shore of Long Island, New York, a place of summer homes, ocean breezes, and quiet affluence. But in the shadows of Gilgo Beach, a hidden terror was growing, one that would take over a decade to fully unravel. In December 2010, a Suffolk County police officer and his K-9 unit were searching along Ocean Parkway, looking for a missing woman named Shannan Gilbert. Shannan was a 24-year-old online escort who had gone missing months earlier after placing a frantic 911 call, claiming someone was chasing her. The officer never found Shannan that day, but what he did find changed everything. Wrapped in burlap and partially buried in the sand were the remains of Melissa Barthelemy, a 24-year-old woman from the Bronx who had also worked as an escort and gone missing the previous year. Within days, 3 more bodies were discovered nearby. All young women, all working in the same industry, all wrapped in burlap. Their names, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. All had disappeared between 2007 and 2010, and this was just the beginning. As investigators expanded their search along the thick brush of Ocean Parkway, they uncovered even more remains, a total of 11 victims. Some were dismembered, some were mere skeletal fragments. A few victims remained unidentified for years. The media soon gave the case a name, the Long Island Serial Killer, or simply Lisk. Law enforcement believed they were dealing with a highly organized and careful killer, someone who likely knew the area well and targeted vulnerable women, mostly sex workers, who advertised online. The use of burlap sacks and precise disposal methods suggested planning and familiarity with forensic countermeasures. Public frustration grew quickly. Years passed with no arrests, and internal conflicts within the Suffolk County Police Department slowed progress. Shannan Gilbert's body was eventually found in 2011, not far from the others, but her cause of death remains disputed. The official ruling? Accidental drowning. Her family never accepted it. To them, she was the first victim. So who was behind it all? For more than a decade, that question haunted Long Island. Some believed the killer had law enforcement or military training. Others thought there might be more than one killer, especially since the locations of the victims and their conditions varied. A few even theorized that a powerful figure might be protecting the killer's identity. But then, in July 2023, a breakthrough came. After years of DNA analysis, digital forensics, and re-examining past evidence, Rex Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect from Massapequa Park, was arrested and charged with the murders of 3 of the women, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Melissa Barthelemy. He was later indicted for Maureen Brainerd Barnes as well. Heuermann was hiding in plain sight, working in Manhattan, raising a family, and living just miles from where the bodies were found. But here's where it gets more chilling. While Heuermann's arrest is a major development, he has only been charged with 4 out of the 11 cases. The other victims remain officially unsolved. Law enforcement has not publicly confirmed whether Heuermann is responsible for all the murders or whether a second killer may still be out there. So even today, more than a decade after those bodies were discovered near the dunes of Gilgo Beach, a cloud of mystery still hangs over the case. Who else was responsible? Are all the victims truly connected? And will the rest of the families ever see justice? Until those questions are answered, the Long Island serial killer case remains, in part, open. Chapter 2. The West Mesa Bone Collector. The desert holds secrets. And in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the windswept plains west of the city would eventually reveal one of the most horrifying secrets of all. A burial ground, hidden in plain sight, filled with the bones of forgotten women. It began on February 2, 2009, when a woman named Christine Ross was walking her dog along a dirt trail in a developing neighborhood on the city's West Mesa. Her dog ran ahead and began sniffing something half buried in the dust. Curious, Christine walked over and made a chilling discovery. What she had stumbled upon was a human bone. Police were called. At first, they assumed it might be the remains of a single missing person. But over the next few weeks, as more of the area was excavated, they uncovered the remains of 11 women and an unborn child, scattered across the desolate construction site. The victims were young, mostly in their teens and early 20s. Many had histories of sex work or drug use. Some had been missing for years. All had one thing in common. They had disappeared between 2003 and 2005, and no one had ever figured out what had happened to them. Authorities were horrified. This wasn't just a case of individual homicides. This was something bigger, something coordinated, something terrifying. The press gave the unknown killer a name: the West Mesa Bone Collector. Who were the victims? Each name told a story of a life cut short. Jamie Barella, 15, Monica Candelaria, 22, Victoria Chavez, 26, Virginia Cloven, 24, Selania Edwards, 15, Doreen Marquez, 24, Julie Nieto, 23, Veronica Romero, 28, Evelyn Salazar, 27, Michelle Valdez, 22, and her unborn baby. The victims were primarily Latina. Many had grown up in or around Albuquerque. A few had prior police contact, which sadly may have contributed to why their disappearances were not aggressively investigated at the time. It wasn't until the bodies were found that people began to connect the dots. Families that had spent years searching now realized their loved ones had been taken by a serial killer. The police launched a massive investigation, forming the 118th Street Task Force and poring over thousands of tips, case files, and forensic reports. But even with all this effort, the case quickly ran into dead ends. No murder weapons, no eyewitnesses, no DNA, just bones and sand. So who could have done this? Over the years, several names have come up. One was Lorenzo Montoya, a local man who lived less than 3 miles from the burial site. He had a long history of violence against women, including multiple arrests related to sex workers. In December 2006, Montoya was killed in a shootout with the boyfriend of a woman he had allegedly attacked. Police suspected him early on, especially because the killings seemed to stop after his death. But they never found hard evidence linking him to the West Mesa remains. Another theory involved human trafficking rings. Albuquerque is near several major interstate highways and has been known as a transit point for drug and human trafficking. Some investigators wondered whether the women were victims of a broader network, and the dumping ground was simply a convenient place to hide them. Yet another theory, a still active serial killer, hiding in plain sight. Some believe that the person responsible is still alive, perhaps even still living in New Mexico, quietly avoiding attention, knowing full well how close they came to being caught. To this day, the FBI and Albuquerque police continue to receive tips. In fact, billboards around the city still display phone numbers urging people to call in with information. Family members of the victims have held marches and vigils, demanding renewed attention and justice. But 15 years later, the case remains unsolved. No arrests, no confirmed suspect, no closure. Just a field of dust where a monster once buried his victims, and a city haunted by what was found beneath the surface. Chapter 3. The I-70 Killer. The Midwest is known for its calmness, rolling fields, quiet towns, familiar faces. But in the spring of 1992, something deeply disturbing was moving through the heartland. and it left a trail of death along one of America's busiest highways. Interstate 70, or I-70, stretches across more than 2,000 miles of road from Utah to Maryland. But for 1 month in 1992, a stretch between Indiana, Missouri, and Kansas became the hunting ground of a man who remains unidentified to this day. He became known as the I-70 Killer. It began in Indiana. On April 8, 1992, Robin Fuldauer, a 26-year-old store clerk, was found shot to death inside the Payless Shoe Source where she worked in Indianapolis. There was no sign of a robbery. Money was still in the register. The killing seemed sudden, cold, and personal. Just 2 days later, on April 10, 1992, another store clerk, Patricia Magers, 32, and a customer, Patricia Smith, 23, were shot inside a bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas. This time the killer took nothing. The women had been executed at close range. Then on April 27, Michael McCown, a 40-year-old ceramics store manager, was found shot to death in Terre Haute, Indiana. His store was similar to the previous ones, small, quiet, near the highway. But Michael was a man, unlike the other victims. Police later theorized that the killer may have mistaken Michael for a woman from behind, as Michael wore his hair long, and the store was named Sylvia's Ceramics. The killer didn't take cash. He didn't leave fingerprints. He didn't interact with witnesses. He entered, killed, and left, usually within minutes. The murders always took place during slow hours, usually near closing time, when few people would be around. What did witnesses say? In one of the later killings, a witness briefly saw the man exiting the crime scene. He was described as a white male, around 5 feet 7 inches to 5 feet 9 inches, slim build with reddish or sandy blonde hair, possibly in his mid to late 20s at the time, carrying a small caliber .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol. Despite multiple composite sketches and media coverage across the Midwest, the man was never identified. Chapter 4, the Colonial Parkway, Virginia, the birthplace of America, is filled with history. Quiet roads cut through forests, rivers flow past old battlegrounds, and lovers often park along scenic roads to enjoy the calm. But beginning in the late 1980s, the peaceful landscape of the Colonial Parkway became the hunting ground for a cold, calculating killer. To this day, that killer has never been identified. Pattern begins. It started on October 12, 1986. Two young women, Kathleen Kathy Thomas, 27, and her girlfriend Rebecca Dowski, 21, were found brutally murdered in Kathy's Honda Civic. The car had been pushed over the edge of an embankment near the Colonial Parkway in Williamsburg, Virginia. Their throats had been slashed with such force it nearly decapitated them. But what stood out even more was how neat the crime scene was. No signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds, no valuables stolen, just death, silence, and a disturbing sense of calm. Exactly 1 year later, in September 1987, David Knobling, 20, and Robin Edwards, 14, went missing near a Lover's Lane spot by the James River Bridge. Days later, their bodies were found in a marsh. David had been shot, Robin too. Both were partially clothed. The pattern. Hidden in plain sight between 2001 and 2018, at least 51 women were found murdered in eerily similar ways throughout Chicago. The victims were mostly black women, many in their 20s to 40s, and most were either sex workers, struggling with addiction, or living in high-poverty neighborhoods. Nearly all of them were strangled or suffocated, left in vacant lots, alleys, or abandoned buildings, found in various states of undress, killed without any clear motive. Money was rarely taken, and the crimes did not seem personal. Many of the locations were within the same police districts. Some bodies were dumped just blocks apart. Yet for years, these cases were treated as individual, unrelated homicides. It wasn't until a data project by Murder Accountability Project, EWIN MAP, an independent nonprofit that tracks unsolved murders in the U.S., flagged something deeply disturbing. They ran a cluster analysis on homicide cases in Chicago and found that the statistical likelihood of so many women being murdered with the same method within such close proximity over a defined period of time strongly suggested the work of a serial killer or multiple killers. Why wasn't it public? The bigger question became, how did this go unnoticed for so long? The answer is uncomfortable. Many of the victims came from marginalized communities. They were women of color, poor, addicted, forgotten. For years, families and activists accused the city of not taking these cases seriously. Police departments cited a lack of witnesses, underfunding, and forensic challenges. One mother, whose daughter had been found strangled in a vacant lot, told a local reporter, "If this was happening in the suburbs to white women, they would have had helicopters in the air. They would have caught someone by now." She wasn't wrong. The pattern was there. It just took the public to see it first. Media steps in 2019, ProPublica Illinois and the Chicago Tribune released a joint investigation that pulled back the curtain. They found 75% of the women were Black. Many were found in the south and west sides of Chicago. The majority were killed in the early morning hours. It did few leads, fewer arrests. The investigation forced the Chicago Police Department to take a second look. A special task force was formed. Cold cases were re-examined. DNA was tested, though degradation, weather exposure, and time had erased much of the biological evidence. Still, by 2022, some arrests were made in a handful of cases. But even then, those arrested were not tied to the wider pattern. Many victims remain nameless, and their murders remain open. To date, no official serial killer designation has been made by CPD. They acknowledge patterns, but they stop short of confirming a single killer. Some experts believe these killings may be part of a trafficking operation, with murder used to silence victims or dispose of those seen as a liability. The use of empty lots and abandoned buildings. The consistent method. It all points to people who know the terrain, who know how to kill quietly and disappear. Community response. Where are we now? As of 2024, the case, or cluster of cases, remains unresolved. Despite some arrests in individual murders, the majority of the 51-plus killings remain open, and no official suspect has been charged with more than one of them. Many believe the killer, or killers, are still walking among us, living quietly in a city of millions. Maybe they changed their behavior, or maybe they haven't, and until someone speaks out, until new evidence emerges, the Chicago Strangler will remain a terrifying question mark in a city desperate for answers. 5 stories, dozens of lives lost, and not a single confirmed killer behind bars. From the eerie sands of Gilgo Beach to the hidden alleys of Chicago, these cases remind us that serial killers aren't just relics of the past. They exist in the now, in the shadows, in silence, in the spaces we forget to look. Justice has no timeline, but for the families left behind, time is running out. So ask yourself, how many more victims will there be before the dots are finally connected? If this chapter left you speechless, let us know in the comments. Like the video if these stories deserve more attention. And don't forget to subscribe to Thriller X for the next chapters, because we're just getting started. The truth is out there, and we're going to keep digging until it's no longer hiding.